Hello everyone, Everett here from 40 and 20 with another watch review. This time I've got a pretty fun watch. I'm excited to do this video. I've had 4 EMG Nemos in my possession for a few weeks. Eric from EMG sent these to me. For those of you that listen to 40 and 20, the podcast, often or even perhaps occasionally, this is a watch that you'll be familiar with because we talk about it all the dang time. I think that for 2019, this was one of our very favorite watches. This was introduced in late 2018 and released in 2019, and it made our list of notable watches of 2019. It's a watch that is very near and dear to the 40 and 20 show, and to, I think, no small number of our audience has purchased these by way of hearing from it on the show. We love this watch. Bottom line, we love this watch. And I have got 4 of them. The story of this watch is interesting and a bit personal to me. I signed up in 2017 for the Watch You Seek Affordables Forum, the F71 Forum, formerly known as. I signed up for the 2017 Vintage Diver Project watch. That was a watch that had been conceived of by HK Ed, as well as a number of other guys that are regulars to the Affordables Forum. The vision for that watch was a 40 millimeter vintage style dive watch, and I think, in fact, the genesis of that watch was actually a picture of a vintage Technos skydiver watch. That project, like all other project watches, was subject to a number of votes by committee, and eventually we wound up with a couple of different versions known as the Emperor divers. I have a blue version here. There was also a black version with a black dial and a black PVD coated steel bezel, as well as a brown dialed version also with that black. So the blue dialed variant, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to get right around there. I get some pretty good color. The blue dialed variant is the one I opted for. It's this beautiful glossy blue dial. Obviously these big sort of chunky markers, steel bezel. Just a really fantastic watch. Unfortunately, they ran into a number of issues with folks signing up for this. The project watches are not always tremendously popular. Sometimes they're scraping for minimum order quantities, and we did in this case. We did not have enough watches to go to production. Not enough orders, which is to say. But as you can see, I've got mine here, so it went to production. What happened is EMG, HK Ed, who's 1/3 of EMG. We've talked about this a number of times on our show, but EMG is made up of HK Ed, Eric, who's our stateside representative, who's in Michigan, as well as Derek, who's in who's in Scotland. Chico LeBrons is his Instagram name. Those 3 guys make up EMG, and they collaborate on watch decisions and bring us fantastic watches. They, at that time, decided, well, we can rescue this project by way of coming out with our own vintage style skin diver-esque watch. Enter EMG Nemo. So what is it? It's a 40 millimeter by 20 millimeter, so a 40 millimeter dive watch, 20 millimeter lugs, very sort of traditional sizing, named after, obviously, Jules Verne's 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, and not named after the Disney clownfish. It's a 60s, 70s skin diver style watch. I mean, what more to say about it? So, specs. The boring stuff. 316L stainless steel case. A Miyota 90S5 movement. 40 millimeters wide. Little bit of bezel overhang. 40 millimeters wide. 20 millimeter lug. 13 and a half tall, and we'll come back to that. 13 and a half tall, 47.5 lug to lug, so a fairly compact lug to lug. It's going to have a C3X1 Superluminova, so going to shine plenty bright. It's not a Fotina. The lume is sort of a whitish green or greenish white. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful domed or maybe boxed sapphire crystal, sits way up high. Screw down crown, 200 meters of water resistance. Signed crown, same as the logo on the dial. Solid end links, and this fantastic beads of red bracelet. So when you order these, initially you had 6 dial choices, and I don't think they're all available anymore. But in addition to the 4 I have here, so this is the green. Again, a little hard to capture these colors. I'm going to have to work on my lighting a little bit. But this beautiful, beautiful green, the denim blue, which I think might be my favorite after having spent some time with it. Black, obviously, and this is a matte black dial. It's not particularly glossy. And the white, the crispy white. In addition to these 4, there are also a yellow dialed and a powder blue variant that I don't have, although we did have the yellow dialed variant for a while, several months ago, so you can see some pictures of that on our Instagram. So 6 dial colors. More specifically, up close on this dial, beautiful, beautiful batten markers, a polished surface on the inside that comes down to meet that dial, but then fantastic big lume plots on each one of those. Beautiful, polished. This is the HK Ed logo, or HK Ed's sort of Trekkie logo. Each of these has Nemo in red, 20 ATM right underneath that for its 200 meters of water resistance, and big lume plot on the second hand. Fantastic white chapter ring, which, why not, right? Now, I think the second coolest part about this watch, or perhaps the first, is this bezel insert. So, 120 click bezel, piece of cake. I will say that on each one of these, the bezel action is very stiff. Very stiff. And when we had the yellow version, and I believe the yellow was a prototype, it was not quite as stiff. The bezel on all 4 of these is tight. I suspect, without knowing, that will loosen up. That'll free up over time. But it's something to note that that bezel is not a single-handed turner. You really have to, this blue one, particularly tight. You really have to get in there. So that's good. It means it's not going to be moving around and disrupting on you, but it also means that you're going to have to work to get that thing to turn. With that said, this bezel insert, this is a matte black ceramic bezel insert. It is loomed. And you guys, this thing is fantastic. My favorite part of the watch, or like I said, perhaps my second favorite, is this bezel insert. I've actually not ever seen anything like it. It gives the appearance of the sort of ghosted, a sort of ghosty bezel without actually being faux anything. It's that matte surface. Really gives it, really lends itself well to the vintage style of this watch. But it winds up looking both vintage and incredibly modern at the same time. Love, 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 love that bezel. Other favorite part of this watch, and you guys will know this already because we've talked about it. Other favorite part of this watch, you guys, look at this bracelet. Not necessarily the clasp. The clasp was good, fine. But this beads of rice bracelet, I'm a sucker. I'm a sucker for a comfy, drapey bracelet, and this guy totally takes the cake. I'm going to stick on the black one because this is the one that we've got all unpacked. Oh. Wearing my, man, you guys look at this thing. Wearing my HK Ed 1963 today, 38 millimeters. Check that thing out. Yeah. So, let's get this guy on the wrist. That bracelet, so comfortable. You know, it winds up wearing like a strap almost, and it's obviously not. But I think people have the same basic feeling about shark mesh, you know, that it wears comfortable and drapey, almost strap-like. That's how I feel about this Beads of Rice bracelet. You know, I don't know if there's significant differences between the various Beads of Rice manufacturers, and it seems like practically everybody's making a Beads of Rice bracelet today. But this thing is just really phenomenal. The clasp is a pretty typical for this price range, machined scissor clasp. It's as Jody would say, a proper scissor clasp. I don't think the clasp is anything special. It's chunky and it's sturdy. It's got a ton of micro adjustments. The locking mechanism is not, it's well engineered. The execution on at least the versions of this I've seen isn't spectacular. There's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't ever bother me while I'm wearing it, but maybe just a touch of slop there. Very cool deep engraving of that Jules Verne-esque squid, and then repeated on the case back. Let me see if I can get a better focus on that case back. Repeated on the case back. Super deep engraving. Just beautiful. In fact, took this to a Red Bar event last night. I don't think anybody had seen this watch, and everybody commented about how cool the case back was. Yeah. What else to say, guys? Well, why don't we get into one other niggle I have about this watch? You see it? Got some booty on her. You know, this watch has a Miyota 90S5, which I think is totally fantastic movement. And for those of you who don't know, 90S5 is the same as a Miyota 9015, just with no date. So when you go to set the date on this thing, or when you go to set the time on this thing, there's no blind spot for the date. So true dateless movement. But this was engineered for an NH35, and so you can see same protuberance on the back. I think perhaps when they made the move to go with the 90S5 or the Miyota movement in this, there was an opportunity to slim that case up. They did not do so, and I don't know if that was a cost-saving decision or what the decision was. I think Eric and I talked about it at one point, but ultimately the case retained that slightly bulky look. I think that they could have taken some effort to slim that booty down, but here we are. You know, the actual wear of this thing, because of the case sides, that really slim sloping lug case, you don't feel it. You don't feel it on the wrist. It wears, let's see if I can, well, maybe not. It wears very tight to the wrist. Fits under a shirt sleeve like butter. No issues there, but something to note, that case back is a little bit out there. So where do you guys get these things? You can get them on the EMG website. And let me tell you, they are not expensive. I think last time I checked, they were $375, which is just a fantastic deal. I think that if you want a dive watch, you know, we talked about the Sector last time we were here. Between these two watches, the Notice Sector and the EMG Nemo, if you're looking for a dive watch right now, an automatic micro brand dive watch, I wouldn't direct you anywhere else. I think these are two of my favorite watches that have come out in the last, year and a half. And it would be the first place I would start if I wanted that, $400 watch. Totally cool, totally beautiful, really well manufactured. Um, just a lovely watch. So that's it, guys. Thanks for joining me.